I've made a few adjustments to my Islanders prospect rankings, so let's go over my new top 5 and the bottom 5 as well. I assume that means bottom 5 somewhere. Welcome to my new home office. I fixed it up just in time for the regular season, and I'm ready. I've got my 4 bars, I've got my legends in the background. I can't really do a mirror image here with Potvin, Surgeon, I've got 19, I've got 22 back there. I can't really do mirror images again. Goring's hanging up. I've got my Bonhommes. I haven't figured out my record thing here, but that's not important. We're here in the office, ready to go. I'm further back from the camera as well, which is great because it's not just like focused on my face, so let's get to it. The top 5 and bottom 5 prospects in the Islanders system. Before we get to the prospects and the top 5 and the bottom 5, I want to discuss the changes I've made to the ranking or to the model. And there are 2 things here. The first one is I split growth from the NHLE. Now you'll know in my previous videos, if you've seen them, that I base my rankings off of NHLE. And NHLE is translation factors. And what that means is that it'll take whatever a player's done at whatever level and translate that to the NHL level. So let's say, for example, a player puts up 20 points in 40 games at the second tier of the Swedish hockey pyramid. What does that translate to at an NHL level? Sure, it's half a point per game. What does that mean at the NHL level, though? So then when you have an NHLE for every player, everyone is being ranked by the same metrics. And you're not ranking like, well, what one player did at the second tier of the Swedish pyramid versus NCAA hockey, for example. You can't necessarily equate the two one by one just through the eye test. So having NHLE helps that. But in previous rankings, I attached growth to that as well. So whatever growth rate those players had over the last 4 years, I added as a factor. Well, I've taken that away now. What I'd said previously was we're really interested in players growing, who's growing the most. And while that remains true, we also need to know who's at the best level now, who's the top prospect now based off of their production rate. So I've still kept growth as a factor. I've just split it, and we're not going to look at that right now, right? Because it still matters who's growing, but we just want to keep that to the side. We're really worried who's the top prospect and who's not. So we're using NHLE for that. The other change I've made is I've built in everything for a specific year. So if a player goes from the Liga level to the U20 level, I've built that in and I've captured that. And because what I was doing before was just taking the largest sample size. But just because a player has played 40 games at, let's say, the Liga level and 20 games at the U20 level, we can't forget what they did at the U20 level. That's still a considerable amount of their season. So I've built that in. I've weighted it to make sure that I'm not giving too much weight to the U20 or too much weight to the Liga level. I've weighted it based off of how long they've been at each level. And I feel that that gives a more complete picture of an NHLE for that player for that year. So, with that being said, I've talked about the changes I've made to the rankings. Here is the top 5 and the bottom 5. Top 5 prospects: Robin Salo, Anatoly Golishev, Samuel Budzik, Ruslan Ishikov, and Otto Koivula. I don't think any of those names really kind of like, oh my god, surprises anyone. Maybe Otto Koivula, but when you look at the actual NHL, you're kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. The bottom 5 might shock a few people, but we'll discuss it. Aturatu, Jacob Ivanka, Eto Lucas, Alexander Ljungcrantz, and Christian Kreiger. So let's get to those prospects one at a time, from the top 5 to the bottom 5. When you look at Robin Salo, there's no surprise as to why he's the top ranked prospect. His NHLE from year to year has been growing steadily, but again, we're not looking at just growth rate here. We're looking at just NHLE for last year, and he's got 27. He was a 27-point player at the NHL level, or translated to an NHL production. That's really good. Maybe on another team that's not top-ranked prospect. For the Islanders, that definitely is. And the eye test holds out. When we've seen him in the preseason, he very much looks like an offense-first player that can hang at the NHL level. He can skate, he can see the ice, he can put up points and get pucks to the net. This rings true. He's not going to play at the NHL level, but any other player, or any other team, I should say, he'd be in the NHL this year. But for now, he's at the AHL, and I expect this NHLE to go up because he's going to be playing, I would assume, at least top 4, if not top pair, on the power play, and just big minutes for the Bridgeport Islanders. Anatoly Golishev has not made any of my top 5s before this, and there's a reason for that, and it's because of growth. He hasn't really been growing at the KHL level. Now, that makes sense based off his age. He's kind of plateaued at the KHL level. But he's still a good player. His NHLE is a 32-point player. You could even see 3 or 4 years ago, he was a 44-point player at the NHL level. Right? He's a good, maybe not top 6, but at least middle 6 to bottom 6 player at the NHL level, based off of NHLE, of course. And it seems that the eye test confirms that. Maybe not our eye test, because we didn't see him very much at the NHL level in the preseason, but Barry Trotz seems to really like this player. So there's something here. Samuel Budzik is another obvious name here. He's probably your number 2, and that makes a lot of sense. When you look at his NHLE, it skyrockets last year with that solid year with the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. 18-point NHL pace, which is lower than Robin Salo, but he plays a more two-way game. Robin Salo is not a two-way player. He's very much offense first. Doesn't mean Robin Salo can't defend, but he's not defense first. He's very much offense first. Whereas Samuel Budzik is a bit of both, which might have him vaulted in your rankings above Robin Salo, right? He's maybe more NHL ready because he can play that two-way game. And look, Samuel Budzik is a really good player. I expect that his NHLE is probably going to go up again this year, depending on how many games he gets. I assume he's healthy enough. He might not play right away. They might give him a little bit of time to get back to full health, but he'll get a run in soon. And he also will be top 4, if not top pair, alternate between him and Robin Salo because they're both lefties. He'll get power play time. He'll probably get PK time as well, but that's not going to help with the points. But Samuel Budzik is going to have another solid year this year. And it's going to be I'm not going to say a fight, but competition, I'll say, between him and Robin Salo to see who's the top ranked left-hand defenseman. Ruslan Shukov is prospect number 4, and that seems about right to me. I'm a little bit higher on him than other people are. I understand his size doesn't necessarily help him at the NHL level per se, but I think he's got the talent to overcome that. Last year with TPS, put up a 25-point NHLE pace. Just a really solid offensive player. Not the greatest center, I'm going to say. It's not to say he's not good. He's okay defensively. But I think he's going to be a better winger than he is a center, specifically when he gets to North America, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with having wingers. You need wingers, right? You need 2 of them on every line. So I think he's going to be converted to a winger when he gets here. And his ability to find seams, find plays, find players is incredible. His shot is okay. I don't think he's going to be a 20-goal player at the NHL level. But he's got the potential to be a Josh Bailey-like player. Number 5 is Otto Koivula, and he hasn't made any of my previous rankings just because the growth rate isn't really there. He took quite a hit 2 years ago, didn't really play that well. Last year was a little bit better. He had a little bit of a stumble at the beginning of the season, but picked it up near the end. You can see he had a 20-point NHLE, so that's good. But there's still something missing from Otto Koivula's game. With someone of his size, who's 6'4", he needs to be more physical. It's not to say he's got to go out there and fight. No one is asking him to do that. He needs to use that size to his advantage, specifically in and around the net. He's got to be more of a modern power forward, which is not his game. He needs to add that to his game this year. He could, but we'll see if that happens. Like we talk about adding a physical side or a meanness, right, to a player's game, specifically when it comes to Matthias Reianemi. And when you talk to Matthias, he's like, yeah, I know I have to do that, but it's not natural to me. Same thing here for Otto Koivula. That's why it's taking a little bit. Bottom 5 players. I'm going to get pelters for this one. Aturatu comes in at number 5. And this isn't me saying he's one of the worst prospects in the team, or in the system, I should say. It's just based off of his NHLE, he doesn't have one of the highest. Now, we can all explain that away. Yeah, he didn't really play that well at the men's league last year. He just didn't. He didn't get a lot of ice time, didn't get a lot of opportunities, and it just wasn't a great year for him. We all know that, right? That's canon, that's established. But this year should be a better year for him. I expect this to go up, assuming he gets more ice time, of course, right? Like, he hasn't played in the last 2 games, and he got 11 and a half minutes the game before that. But with injury to I think their second line center, I would imagine he gets a more regular role. Not to say he's going to be in their top 6 centers, but he's certainly going to play third line center with more minutes, maybe even power play time, which should help his production. I don't expect this to stick. It's low right now for Aturatu, but the ceiling is a lot higher than what this ranking says. Jacob Ivanka comes fourth lowest, and the production just isn't there for him. That doesn't mean to say he's not a good player. The guy is incredible on the faceoff dot for Notre Dame. Just really strong faceoff man. I don't expect he's going to break into the NHL as like even a middle six center. I think the ceiling is a fourth line center for him, maybe AHLer. Maybe on another team he can carve out a better role, but with the Islanders it might be difficult for him. As it stands now, he's a fourth line center at best, and the ranking kind of confirms that. Anatoly comes in at third last, and the production isn't there, but the production is certainly there when it gets to the U20 level. And the NHLE, still 4.5 last year. It's going to be a little bit higher this year. He's not going to be a top 9 player. He's not a top 9 player even at the NHL level. But can he be an effective fourth line player? Yes. Yes. And is that good? Yeah, absolutely. Look at the Islanders, right? Like, they have a really strong fourth line. You have a bunch of really strong fourth liners. That's good. And he projects as a Cal Clutterbuck, sorry, I can't pronounce that very well. Valery Nichushkin is what Russell Nishikov compares him to. Anatoly is a good player. He's not going to do well in these projections, or these rankings, I should say, but that's okay. Alexander Lundqvist coming in before last in the system is not necessarily a great look when you look at the 2020 draft for the Islanders. They certainly reached to grab him right in the third round. They didn't need to grab him that early. It's not to say he's not a good player. It's just the ceiling doesn't seem particularly high with him. So we'll see how this goes. He's playing between Brynäs and the Brynäs' U20 squad. He will represent Sweden probably at the World Junior Championships in a bottom 6 role. So there might be something there with him, but so far there isn't. The last player here is Christian Kreiger. And to be fair to him, these rankings aren't going to do him well, right? He projects but his NHLE is 1.8 from last year. Now, the thing here is that this isn't going to help him because he's more of a stay-at-home defenseman. He's not an offense-first guy. He's a shutdown player. And as you know, just like Adam Pelech, the points are never there, right? That doesn't mean, though, that he's not a good player. Christian Kreiger's already represented Team USA at various levels. There's something there to his game as far as a shutdown player. Can he be an NHLer? Probably not. But if it is an NHLer, it's a bottom 6 role as a shutdown player, which is okay, right? That's not to say that there's anything bad or wrong about that. You need bottom 6 guys who can play 18 to 20 minutes a night and shut down guys. That's probably what Christian Kreiger can be at his best. So that's the top 5 and bottom 5 prospects in my ranking as it stands today. Let me know what you think. Thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't yet, please do so. If you have, thank you, thank you, thank you.